What's going down? Thor, Basement Boy Banner. This is a Thor's Thoughts. Man, crazy times we're living in, and almost perfectly timed. It was the dropping of Tiger King on Netflix. I mean, you saw the title of the video. That's why you clicked on it, right? Thor's Thoughts on Tiger King. That show, man, that show, at first I wasn't going to get on the hype train, but then just out of due to sheer boredom, and then I've watched literally everything. Me and the wife decided one night, let's check it out. Everyone's been talking about it. You know, I got some people, some friends who are like, why give these psychotic, awful human beings any more publicity or any more attention? And I totally understand that, but it kind of misses the message that if you own exotic pets or if you own exotic wild animals, you're a complete psychopath douchebag. And this show really drives that point home. I mean, pretty solid. And that these people really don't care about the animals whatsoever. It's really all about them. And that goes for everybody from Joe Exotic to Doc Antle to, Jeff Lowe for sure. Even Carol Baskins, I mean, they're all awful people. They're all horrible people. There's not one, with the exception of maybe the lady who loses her arm and the legless dude. There's really no good people in this entire show. There really isn't. I mean, from the get-go, and one of the things that shocked me about this show was every time you thought it was kind of slowing down, you're like, all right, well, so you're like 7 episodes. How can this stretch into 7 episodes? And after episode 1, you're like, oh my God, this is way out of control. Episode 2, you're like, okay, it's crazy, but kind of more of the same stuff. And then by episode 3, you're like, all right, this is getting old. Then they're like, oh, Carol Baskins killed her millionaire husband. Whoa, what? Then they tell that story. And every time in this show that it kind of slows down and the FBI shows up, then it kind of, and then another crazy thing happens, right? When you're kind of like, this show's run its course. Another thing drops where you're like, what? How could this get... I mean, watching Joe Exotic's descent into madness and into just believing his own hype is pure entertainment, but depressing entertainment to a certain extent. But it's good. I mean, those 7 hours that I watched this show, I really wasn't thinking about what was going on right now, where we're at in the world. I was thinking about how messed up these exotic animal owning people are and how awful these human beings are. So it was a nice distraction from, how crazy life has gotten. But yeah, these people shouldn't get any more. I mean, when I heard Carol Baskins talking about checks from Facebook for like $23,000 for all the views she gets on her videos, this is just a woman who exploits animals just as, maybe not to the level or not to the extent that Joe Exotic and Jeff Lowe and that other, I mean, how do these, one of the things that I had a question on is how do these exotic animal owners seem to all be coke, meth, drug addicts in the same turn? How do you have money for all that? The animals, feeding them, the drugs. How? Honestly, how? Joe Exotic was the most riveting character in the whole show by far. I mean, this is his story. But he was 100% set up by Alan and Jeff by the end of it. I 100% believe that because Jeff was going to get caught up in his own stuff. Now, the selling cubs and the shooting the tigers and stuff, for sure, Joe Exotic did all that. And like abusing the animals, for sure. He's a scumbag. Jeff Lowe's a scumbag. They're all scumbags. But the murder for hire thing, it was so thin to begin with. And when the planning of all of it's going on and the dude who gets arrested for it is literally sitting in his office, not even participating, while the 2 people who literally sit and participated and did it, for the most part, are the ones who turned rat. Well, they didn't turn rat. I mean, the fat strip club owner dude turned rat first. And I loved him because he was caught up in definitely some shady stuff. There was more to that than the lemur thing that they're holding over his head. There's no way that's all that they had for him to flip. There definitely was way more than that. Way more than that for him to turn. Because if you ever get caught up in anything and you need to get out of it, you just need to give whoever's got you a bigger fish to take. You give them the bigger fish, you can get out of probably the trouble you're in. Tekashi 6ix9ine literally just got out of jail yesterday. I want that documentary. No, I don't. That's another trash human being. But back to Tiger King. Wow. Even when I was done watching that show, I was just like, wow, you know? Everyone's got an opinion on it. Please, I want to hear your opinions in the comments. You know, did you love the show? Who'd you hate most? You know, the memes have been outrageous for this. I have probably taken 10 to 12 different memes that I've seen off the internet and saved them for use at some point in time, or just shot them back out. Not like I made them, but, you know, just reshared them. Priceless. Doc Antle, I don't know. I love that in the end, his place got raided by the feds. I want to now, and here's where I'm torn, because I want to see a part 2, but I don't think I want to see a 7-part part 2. I just want like an epilogue episode, maybe in like a year, on like where all these people are, you know? Because I would assume Jeff Lowe's gonna be in jail. The other zoo dude, I pulled the cast up just because, the other zoo dude, what was his name? Oh, Tim Stark. These people look, tell me you couldn't watch this show and think to yourself, how do these messed up meth drug addicts have this many tigers and this many exotic animals, and where do they come from? They all sell them to each other. I know it's like a huge thing. And that's funny that in the end, Joe's going to turn with PETA and then rat out everybody else. Like, that's such a classic move. That is such a classic move. James, the fat strip club dude who turned on him, man. I'm just looking at the cast real quick. No, the only good person, you know what? I bet the only good person in this show, like I said earlier, was the lady who lost her arm, like right in the beginning. And then was back at work like 5 days later. That's number one, dedication that she should not have shown to that man and to that profession. And it's messed up that these people think that they're helping the animals. I guess they're taking care of them. So in a way, they definitely are helping the animals. But those animals, and Joe says it at the end, like you can see like they lose their souls in cages. And that's just, oh my God. Like when he talks about the 2 monkeys at the end and then sending them off to this like actual like animal preserve, which that's one thing I hope that brings to light how many of these small zoos are in the country, and that you don't take your kids to them and just don't go, don't support them, don't watch their stuff, don't like their stuff. And then they go away. Right. And I mean, some of the rules that they need to do pass. And that's where Carol and her husband, the weird dude, Howard, oh man, that couple, that when he's singing to her and towards the end of the show and just throughout, I'm like, this is just, it's so wild. Then she definitely killed that first husband. You cannot convince me otherwise. And I would almost assume at this point that she covered him in sardine oil and fed him to the tigers, because she almost pretty much says she did in the show. Loosely in about 6 different parts, but cut together in the right frame, you could make it look like she definitely said that she chopped up her husband and fed him to tigers with sardine oil, which in itself is just, I always knew don't trust a pig farmer. I don't think I ever would have trusted a person who owns tigers, but this almost reaffirms that notion that you just cannot trust exotic animal people, that they are just a group of disturbed, effed up human beings. So steer clear. Don't support their businesses. Don't support them on social media. You know, I remember back when I was, way younger, there used to be this little carnival down in Burnsville, and it was just this little sandal place. They had this monkey, and they had a few animals, and it was just the saddest thing. And I remember when they got shut down, I was so happy, because I was like, it's probably the monkey's either dead or got sold, or who knows what happened to it. But at least it's not sitting in that cage, in that little cage down in that, crappy little carnival 24/7, and maybe have a chance after that. I probably went to one of those, zoo type places. That's just, it's crazy to me how many of them are through the states and how there isn't legislation to prevent them from operating. And how many tigers did Joe have at one point? Like 200 and some? Like, oh my God, there are points in that show where you almost start to feel for Joe. Like when he starts getting into it with Carol Baskins, because let's be honest, if Joe doesn't go so crazy about Carol Baskins, that first producer that was working with him, Rick Kirkham or whatever, that's a winner. That show if Joe doesn't go on the deep end on Carol and you can get him reined in and just make the show on him and actually bring him back to caring about the animals through profiting off the show, it would have made it really, it would have been a completely different story, right? Had it worked out, had they not lost all the footage in the fire, had Joe not went crazy and turned on Kirk or Rick or whatever, and hadn't really just focused solely on Carol Baskins. That's what kind of screwed him over from a lucrative TV show. Because there's trash TV out there, let's be honest. And that what that Rick dude was shooting wasn't going to be any different. I mean, any worse or any better than some of the trash that already exists. And it would have fit in nicely. You could have found a niche for that if they could have kept Joe online. But he just went down the rabbit hole with Carol Baskins and then just went deeper and deeper. And it almost looks like, with the success, he started to believe his own hype. He started to smell his own perfume a little too much. Because then he started running for all these offices, which is just a publicity stunt to get people to come to the zoo. But it backfires. It just makes you look like a complete moron. If he would have stayed in his niche and worked his niche like Carol does, and just left it alone. He was at a point where right before Jeff showed up, he was at a point where he could have burned it and just been like, done, and at least got out of it, had to deal with them. And then Jeff's like, F no, hung up on him and just reignited the whole thing. That's how he ended up selling to Jeff. And then Jeff and Alan, turning on him. Cause why is Alan going to go kill someone for Joe Exotic that he hates just for $3,000? Unless Jeff didn't tell him to. Because he didn't work for Joe, he worked for Jeff. It's wild. It's wild. And then it all comes from that fat James dude turning an informant first over whatever he was into. Definitely not the lemur stuff. But that's another time where you start to almost feel bad for Joe Exotic when Travis shoots himself and one of his two husbands kills himself. That he's a gun-toting gay man with two husbands who owns a bunch of tigers and a zoo. Man, more power to him. If he would have just rode that wave, But then the first husband left with his assistant, like his secretary. But then the secretary was still around the whole time after that, and so was the husband. That's such a weird dynamic. But then when Travis shoots himself, you almost start to feel bad for Joe Exotic again until that other dude comes in the picture, 2 months later? What was his name? Dylan, dude. It's hard to keep track of the human trash in this show. It really is. But like I said, it was entertaining throughout, right? Like you watch the first few episodes, it starts to slow down. Carol Baskins killed her husband. You start to get into it, slows down. Now the FBI are into it because there's a snitch and it's this murder for hire twist. Then it's the setup twist. And then you get out and it's like right at the end, they hit you with I'm going to join PETA now and flip on all the 31 names and all the dirt he knows. Because he knows stuff, which I think these people who all screwed him over should have thought of ahead of time. And maybe the large core of people who he turned on, didn't do anything to him. It was mostly Jeff's fault. And Stark, what was his first name? Tim. But man, and I honestly hope that they never get that zoo up and running. There's no way. I bet you $1 million Jeff Lowe never gets that zoo up and running, especially because what's happening now in the times we're living in now with like the pandemic and everything. If that tanked him and he went bankrupt because of that, if he's not in jail, which I'm pretty sure he's in jail, awesome. Karma coming back around, circling back around. But what did you think of the show? Did you watch the show? My parents are about to watch it. I was actually just talking to my father right before I sat down to shoot this video about the show. And I was telling him, he was saying there's nothing on TV tonight. And I was like, go on Netflix and you and mom watch this. You'll get a kick out of it because it is entertaining. It does have a message that these people don't care about these animals and these types of zoos and these type of people need to be shut down. And the breeding and the selling of cubs and all this sort of exotic wildlife stuff needs to stop. And the saddest statistic is there's more lions and tigers, more tigers for sure, in captivity in the United States than are in wild in the entire rest of the world. That's just depressing to think about. It takes all 7 episodes for this show, I think, to really get to its point of that these animals aren't cared about and they're just money machines for these awful people and don't support these people. And yes, through it, you're going to give them some publicity and some recognition, but you're also going to shine a light on a very dark, disgusting group of people in the United States who need to be shut down, who need to really end their operations. And if this is what does that, and if that whole operation with Joe Exotic is the thing that does that, and they all get taken out, almost like how you take down like a mafia or a drug cartel, it's no different. And the nice thing is most of them are connected to drugs in some sort of way because they're drug-fueled maniacs, most of them. So I don't know. I enjoyed the show for what it was, and I hope you did. Like I said, leave your comments down below. Basement Boy Banter, episode 140 coming up. Levi will be back. Something special. This was Thor's Thoughts. Till the next one. Deuces.